You want to see an Abyss floor done easy? Just skip the mechanics. What's going on, guys? This is Arkaden, and today we're going to be talking through Abyss Floor 97. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this floor, and I tried doing it specifically with the mechanics, and to be quite honest, it's doable. I've done it before. It just wasn't consistent. And to be honest, if I'm going to say done easy in a video, it makes most sense to give you something that you can consistently beat to the best of our ability, of course. So let's start with the team composition and we'll go from there. The composition I've chosen is extremely tanky, so let's just start with the tank. I decided to go with Lilias, and for a couple different reasons. Number one, obviously as a knight she can wear Arius. Arius is going to be able to reduce a lot of the incoming damage, so that's super helpful. But mostly, I really wanted to be able to get dual attacks with the S1 so that we could get a little more damage in there from time to time. As well as on the S3, she has that cleanse, being able to cleanse off the hit debuff that you end up getting, and sometimes the speed down debuff that you get. She ends up being a great character for this particular piece of content. Second, we have Achates. Achates is actually going to be your main healer in this particular situation. With most of the characters, and I'll explain the strategy later, you're going to want to actually hit the boss as opposed to heal. But Achates, you can actually cycle her S3 into her S2 over and over and over and over again, recycling a lot of souls, because she ends up, if you take a look at her skills, she ends up actually getting 2 souls on her S2 and 2 souls on her S3. So if you can cycle between those two, you're going to be getting a lot of extra souls, which is very, very valuable for you. Not a lot of characters can do that. Not a lot of characters can get that kind of healing. So again, Rod of Amaryllis, usable as an amazing healer for this fight. I would take her. The next person on the team is Tamarind. Tamarind is going to be another healer for you that sort of does inevitable healing, but the other main reason you're taking her, just like with Achates, is soul cycling. You want to be getting as many souls as you can. So you'll S1 the boss most of the time with her, but you'll also, every time you hit the S3, you also get a turn right afterwards, but the S3 still gives you 2 souls. So you'll get 2 souls from that, and you'll get whatever soul you get for end up either using the S2 or the S1 afterwards. The S2 boosts your team with 50% combat readiness, which is super nice, meaning you're actually giving yourself other chances to hit the boss with your characters to give you even more souls before the boss goes again. All in all, just that general cycling and the amount of just pure souls she gets makes her so valuable, not to mention the fact that she's actually healing you too. And you'll notice I brought Wondrous Potion Vial, so she also, every single time her turn comes around, is able to cleanse off a debuff, whether or not that's the speed down, but more importantly, the hit debuff is the worst to deal with. Finally, to round out this team, just like we had seen with all the other 3 people that we're bringing on this team, they are a fire type going into Violet. Violet is the final boss, and he is a green or earth type, so they're going to have that class advantage. That's the reason why they were so important. Now with Rohanna, who is sort of a sleeper pick in this particular team comp, she's earth, so at minimum, she doesn't have a class disadvantage, so that's at least huge. She has so much going for her, especially the way that we built her, because we made her extremely thick. We gave her counter sets so that she'll be able to counter back whenever anything hits her, and it procs, which is super nice. And then with Celestine, those counters are giving small heals, and also with the S1 on her, giving shields to people. So between the counterattack effect that exists anytime you hit the invulnerability on the ads, which we'll talk about here in a second, she ends up just healing a ton. She ends up having tons and tons of just random heals from the counterattacks, tons of shielding. She was by far the sleeper pick for this particular composition, and I feel made it so that the composition had no deaths by the time we got to the end. So now that we've gone through the entire composition, I'm sure you're probably thinking to yourself, man, this is going to take so long to get through. And you know what? You're kind of right. Here's the thing. The reality is, if you want to do this a whole bunch of times and really mess around with the mechanics, feel free. It will take a lot more time to do multiple runs like that. This particular comp should be able to beat it on the first go, assuming that you pay close attention during the rest of the mechanical talk through of this particular fight. So without further ado, let's take a look at the way this particular fight works. So jumping right into it, phase 1, we're going to be seeing a converted Aztesta, as well as 3 of the little skeleton buddies to go along with him. You can pretty much ignore all the skeletons. The phase is completely over the minute you finish killing the converted. So after, if it was me, I would probably put myself on auto. You've got an extremely tanky composition that is going to heal themselves no matter what going through this, and very slowly chip away at the converted Estesta, at the same time getting your souls all the way up. You're going to be using the entire first phase just to make sure that you have maxed out souls. You'll notice when I'm fighting through this that there's a certain amount of time that passes where I have a full bar and the boss isn't even close to dead. So I actually just like jump in, hit Archie real quick, and then go back to what I was doing because you just end up cycling so many souls through with this particular team. So feel free. Archie is basically your win condition for doing most of your damage in this particular team. But the general survivability is what we'll talk about once we get into the next phase. So go ahead, Otto, grab yourself some coffee, and come back like 15 or so odd minutes later. I say that. Double check in from time to time. So once phase 2 begins, this is where we start to see the mechanics that we picked this team for making sense, and also the mechanics of the actual boss kicking in. So let's talk about a few of those. Number one, Violet, whenever he uses his S1, actually takes your souls away. So having spent all that time gaining souls in the first phase, make sure that you use your Archies right away. As fast as you possibly can, get those Archies out. Don't allow him to be making you waste time picking up souls that you can't gain extras on and not get that damage. That should immediately get the boss down to almost 75% right off the bat, which is super, super nice. After that, let's talk about the rest of the mechanics of the boss and then why this particular comp works. So after that, his S2 grants invincibility to all allies except for the caster for 2 turns before granting an extra turn to the caster. Counterattacks when an ally granted invincibility is attacked. So if you hit any of his friends, whether or not that's the spearman or the archer or the mage, any of those, when they have invincibility up, will actually counterattack your team. So having counterattack be one of the things that procs the heal from Rohanna, this is where you're going to see Rohanna kind of shine. Whenever you accidentally or are forced to actually have to hit it, it ends up being really, really amazing. So into the actual mechanics of how this kind of works. The mechanical aspects of using the spearman and the bowman, you'll notice, is they all have a way to get to their ultimate where it would get to their sort of filling up the R or the ready for their S3. You want to actually get them to that point as much as possible if you're doing the mechanics properly. So for the bowman, it will take 3 hits, and then for the spearman, it will take 2. The bowman, whenever he has his S3 up, he will actually buff your team and the opposite team with defense buff, which also means that if Violet has the undispellable greater defense buff, it will actually get rid of that and replace it with a normal defense buff. Same thing with the spearman. The spearman will actually do the same thing with attack buff, and it will actually get rid of the greater attack buff that is undispellable, and it will put an attack buff that now is dispellable when that S3 goes off. These are important if you're trying to do the mechanics properly, but you'll notice in this particular version, we're actually spending most of our time just hitting the Violet, and here's why. Violet, anytime that he is not attacked, actually has a combat readiness increase of 15% every single time anyone's attack happens. So if you're not attacking the boss, he is cycling very quickly and getting as many turns as he can to be able to jump back into his S3 and put up the S2 again for invulnerabilities on all of his friends. His S3 attacks the enemy and targets for 5 turns. If the target is already targeted, it will actually do more damage. So he's going to keep cycling himself, and he's going to keep getting that up even faster. Not to mention the fact that I believe it's the bowman also has the ability to put a 1-turn target buff on somebody as well. So if that's up, he can also still target and attack into that. Again, tons of extra damage whenever that's up. So that's why you want to dispel that off as fast as possible, as well as the reality that if you're not attacking the boss, he's going to just keep going as fast as possible. So knowing all of this, the way that we end up beating this fight is basically we're cycling souls. As much as we possibly can be, we're going to be doing Achates, maybe like S3, S2 as much as possible. But for everyone else, you're mostly using S1 into the boss. Because if the boss isn't moving, you're getting more attacks on the boss. The only time that that's not normally the way you want to go is when it comes to Tamarind. Tamarind, when her S3 is up, you want to actually hit the S3 because it gives you 2 souls, as well as using the S2 to give yourself another soul, as well as even then, combat readiness pushing your entire team 50%. So that's going to push your team forward. They're going to get more attacks off on boss, not slowing the boss, but slowing down his stuff if you're not actually hitting him, but actually giving more souls as well. So the more you stop the boss from cycling, the less you lose your souls, the faster you gain souls, and then you're basically slow rolling this fight until Archy's up again, and then you Archy whenever you possibly can. At the same time, if you do notice that the target buff, or target debuff rather, stays on one of your people, make sure that if you have to stop your rotation of just hitting the boss just to make sure that that's gone so you don't take too much damage, do it. It's worth it. Make sure that you're not wasting attacks there or wasting potential incoming damage mitigation by not getting rid of that. It's too huge of a mechanic. All that said, you'll notice as we continue on with the rest of this fight, it's over and over and over again. When you have to sometimes S1 with your Tamarind when she's going to AoE everybody, you'll notice that's hitting all of the people with invulnerability sometimes. That is going to just proc counterattack, which is again another beautiful time to have your Rohanna on board who can basically heal your team through that. All in all, really amazing tactic, and you'll notice I get all the way to the end, and there may be like 1 or 2 spots where it gets maybe a little bit hairy, but it's not so hairy that you're worried about losing. You just might lose a character, and losing a character when you're this tanky is actually just fine because you're still trying to cycle Archy. Biggest thing is cycle Archy as much as possible and then drop it on the boss until you win. So that's it. I mean, it took about 30 minutes in total to get through the whole thing, but all in all, extremely safe. It does get you to the end, in my case, with all 4 characters still intact, but even if you just, again, had 3, as long as you're still able to produce enough soul cycling, you'll be just fine. Gets you through the phase, gets you the amulet, worth it, right? That way you can move on to phase 98, which you'll see floor 98 is also a little bit difficult. All said, it's also very manageable, and we do have a guide for that as well. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.